Hello, I am Jan Butz from the Genealogies of Knowledge Research Network, and this is the third video of an 8-part interactive series on analyzing patterns and concepts in the Oslo Medical Corpus. In the previous video, I highlighted the importance of patterning, which is fundamental to how language works and thus to how we study it. To understand the importance of patterns, you can think, for instance, of idioms. If someone tells you they feel fit as a flute, or that a development in their lives has been a sweet pill to swallow, your mind will react in an interesting way. It will understand the figure of speech, but perhaps it will object to the change in the expected patterns, which involve a fiddle and a bitter pill. You can also think of ritualized events. When you offer condolences, wish someone a smooth recovery, or congratulate someone, you make use of a limited number of expressions and they are fairly fixed in form. Our tendency to recycle expressions is not limited to a handful of phrases or situations. We make use of sequences of frequently co-occurring words all the time, but we cannot intuitively picture the repertoire of patterns we use naturally. This is where corpora come in. They draw attention to collocations and thus to the recurring meaningful word combinations we rely on to communicate. When new situations arise in society, appropriate patterns have to be negotiated. Consider the COVID-19 pandemic. The response to the virus involved the rapid dissemination of hygiene recommendations aimed at both medical workers and at the general public. Phrases such as cover your nose and mouth became recognizable units of meaning, partly organically and partly through conscious efforts to standardize guidelines. If you open up the OMC interface and look for the keyword nose, you can check for yourself how often it occurs as part of a larger, fairly fixed pattern. While doing so, however, you will also find very different mentions of nose, as in the following sentence. The officers kicked and punched him and kneed him in the nose. Obviously, this is not a recommendation, and the example is not unique. When you go over the concordance lines for nose carefully, you will find other mentions of violence and injury. If you check the file names on the left of the concordance, you will also notice, though, that many relevant examples come from a small set of documents. If you click on the concordance line for kneed him in the nose, and then click on Show Metadata, you are presented with further information about the text in which the line appears. The title of the text indicates that the document deals with the ill treatment of asylum seekers by police, and that it was published by Medical Justice, an organization focused on health rights for people who are detained. If you want to know more about the connection between body parts and police brutality, concordance lines that deal with very different topics are distracting. You can choose to delete irrelevant lines using the button at the top right of the screen, but this is a temporary measure which you will have to repeat if you shift your focus, for instance, from the nose to the mouth. A more proactive search strategy is to select a subcorpus. If you click on the menu button at the top left, you can activate subcorpus selection. Opening up this function will show you a variety of metadata categories such as author, publication date, and organization. In the list of organizations, you will find Amnesty International, MedAct, and Migrants Organize, just to list a few that have similar concerns to medical justice. Selecting those organizations will result in a smaller, more focused corpus for you to work with. After making your selection, you can repeat your initial search, and the metafacet tool, which you find on the bottom right of the web interface, will highlight shared contextual features such as recurrent organizations or document types among the concordance lines you are looking at. This can help you further focus your view. A complete list of texts included in the corpus, as well as more information about represented organizations, is available on the OMC website. Checking this overview can help you decide on which data you want to include once you settle on a research avenue. As was explained in the first video, the scope, range of document types, and thematic focus of the corpus are very broad. Narrowing down the sources you look at will make it easier to focus on particularly interesting patterns. This is typically a back and forth process. If you immediately settle on a small subcorpus, you could miss out on interesting connections. While you might assume, for instance, that hygiene recommendations and reports on state violence are unrelated, some may be inclined to interpret both as violations of bodily autonomy. If you encounter a clause in the corpus such as "the nurse placed her hands over my mouth," Can you be certain about the setting and the implications before you check the metadata? In short, once you identify a pattern, a concept, or an organization that is worth focusing on in isolation, use selection tools to restrict your dataset, but keep an open mind and let textual correspondences be your guide, even when they challenge your assumptions.